I went to school in Rosebank, Pridwin. After that, I went to St. John's. You know, they have their reputations, but I also didn't really feel totally welcome in their culture. And I wondered why, and it was because I recognized the flaws in our society. We have spaces that are so privileged, juxtaposed to areas that are incredibly destitute. You know, Yeovil, as an example. It just didn't sit right. And I would question why that was and why our school wouldn't talk about it. So it's always inquiring, you know, what's wrong with our society? Why can't we get to the place that we want to be? Growing up with the family friends that I have, there was incredible passion and interest in making society better. Just didn't see it happening. After that, I sort of felt a little bit lost. What career path am I going to follow? I got nudged towards medicine. I looked at the curriculum and ran in the opposite direction very quickly. And I asked myself, okay, well, what's something that people are always going to need, and that's food? How do I cement myself in something that people are going to require? And that was agriculture. And I had a deep love for the environment. I wanted to ask, how can we produce food in a way that wasn't extractive of people, of our natural resources? And that's how I ended up moving from politics and philosophy. I should have choreographed this speech with my dad because he gave a lot of the background, to something that cemented me not just in the ideology of it, but made me an expert. And so I found Wageningen University and research in the Netherlands, a tiny town of 30,000 people, but an incredibly rich area. You lived in a bubble, and that has its pros and cons. What I found was how important community is to people's well-being, to people's sense of safety, and to what that does to local government, holding it accountable. When people are able to gather, how much can change in such a short space of time. And I studied international land and water management. I got a real appreciation for the technical work of how do you make these crazy systems that we depend on function, and what happens when they go wrong. It's also the time where I started getting a better sense of what's happening to our world, socially, politically, environmentally. We're facing climate collapse, and South Africa is nowhere near prepared to deal with that. I was also coming across South African PhD students who were coming to the end of their studies, getting offered really comfortable jobs for a relatively soft life to live in the Netherlands. And it just didn't sit right with me. You've had so much privilege to be in the place that you are, and you're just gonna give that to a consulting firm that doesn't really need you. And so I promised myself I'd come back, and I'd use my skills here to do whatever I could to improve the lives of South Africa's vulnerable. And I decided I loved soil science, so I decided to specialize in soil physics and sustainable land management. And it was also the time that I started to get myself really irritated by the lack of progress the environmental movement specifically was making. And I asked myself, why? Why can't you guys get this right? 30 years you've had, but you've been playing too nice. And so that's why I got myself arrested about 5 or 6 times in the Netherlands. And I came back here and I saw the same trend emerging. It's WWF standing in Rosebank Mall asking for 250 rand a man. It's like, guys, it's not gonna work because you're playing too nice. You need to be dogged in this fight, right? You need to be determined. You cannot give up. And you've got to escalate. So you learn the skills of escalation very quickly and what that could do to you and your freedoms, and possibly your weekends. You would end up in a jail cell with people who got arrested the night before for armed robbery. And that's what brought me into figuring out my role in civil society. I got offered and nominated to join Defend Our Democracy. It's one of the many hats I wear in civil society. But you're right, it's not something you go into, it's something that's conferred upon you. Then I started to get a little irritated with civil society. we just weren't making any progress. We kept stumbling. We kept getting offered some PR or communications person to accept our memorandum and disappear for the next 4 months before you have to mobilize and go again. It was really irritating. And I thought to myself, okay, well, civil society, we've got a lot of good people. We don't necessarily have the power to actually influence, and we're not making strides enough that are going to get us there. So I have to do that and it was the and part that I was struggling with. I'd never voted for the same party twice. I never was really convinced by any political party to stay in there long enough to find out what they had to offer. It just wasn't exciting. And it was one day when I was having coffee with my good friend Irfan Mangera, who can't be here tonight, he's hosting a meeting, but I wish I could pick him out. And he said he was joining this outfit, RISE Mzansi. This was when I was asking him to take part in an occupation of Standard Bank that we were organizing. And he said, this is a man that I trust with my life. And that's really what politics is about. It's about entrusting someone who's going to represent you. But he said, I don't just want to represent you, I want you to be part of this movement. So join as a volunteer, see if it feels right. And I did, and RISE did everything I wanted a political party to do. They went and they spoke to people, and they spoke on issues-based politics, right? They recognized that people are suffering right now and we need solutions. It's no good being dogmatic anymore. Look where that's got us. And it was that sort of culture that I really wanted, and I didn't know if it was going to be effective. And I think the national results, a lot of us were disappointed. But it didn't matter, because RISE is saying we're going to continue doing this because it's the right thing to do. We need new leaders. And so, yeah, coming to this point was an interesting one for me. I got nominated. I heard for the first time in a house meeting as a post-election debrief that my name was being put up. And I shrunk into the couch. I said, good Lord. Because I didn't know what a ward councillor was supposed to do. Occasionally, in the areas where we lived, I would look at these posters of strangers' faces and I would wonder, what is your job? And city council is a black box. Who knows what goes on in there? Who's telling you what goes on in there? I found out when I was researching what would my job be if I get this, that they're the ones who are supposed to be telling you what's going on. I think I'll come to the end now, and I want to speak to what are our expectations? Why have they dropped so low for our public representatives? Tibbs, you're right. Bridget Steer was an incredibly well-respected councillor in this ward, in the country. I think there was a Daily Maverick thing that ranked her the best in the country, which is an incredibly remarkable feat. But then you start to ask, okay, well, what did Bridget do so well? And lots of people have really good answers. She's responsive. She genuinely cares for the community. And that's a model I'd love to emulate. Can't we be more ambitious? Can't we expect more from these people who we entrust with our vote, which is so precious and increasingly diminishing as people bow out of the political system? And I would ask people on the street, we've been campaigning every day, we've been out there speaking to people, organizing house meetings. Did Bridget ever tell you what she did in city council? No one could raise their hand. I think if you're very active and you would ask, that information would be proffered, but it wasn't forthcoming. And that's, I think, what we're wanting to offer with this election. It's that and so much more. Excellence in service delivery. For God's sake, I went to Hurstville Reservoir yesterday with Makashule Ghana. We went into the offices to try and find someone who we could speak to. We went to police stations before that to find out what are the issues in the ward. We got faced with station commissioners who were brilliant and really forthcoming with information, really open and honest. And rightly so, these areas are relatively well policed. We can speak about Brixton, Auckland Park and Melville, but for the most part, they're performing better than others. When we went to the water station, total apathy. People have checked out. They're like, what have you got for me? What cauldron did you bring? Information. You go to another person, the head of the electricity. He's like, I don't have the mandate to speak to you. So you have to ask, who does? They're not in the office today. Where are they? I don't know. What's their number? Can I call them? I'll check. And they won't check. And so you have to stay and you have to bang on the door. And I think that's the promise. We learned, I've been researching and I'm speaking to incredible people who are active in this community. What are the problems with this reservoir? And there's an enormous wealth of information in this community. I spoke with Barbara today, and to find out about safety. What does it mean to have a sense of safety? It's about having an environment that encourages people to come out, to participate, right? Putting up more walls, boom gates, policing your streets with private security, it doesn't even make you feel safer. Stats speak for themselves, it doesn't work. Right? But things do. And we have people like her who know how to make this work. Why haven't we leveraged that? I've lived in these areas all my life. I don't really know my neighbors, right? We don't have that sense of community, of belonging. Why hasn't that been facilitated? Who's supposed to be doing that? That's one of the mandated responsibilities of a ward councillor. The amount of information, the amount of passion and care, compassion that people have for their neighbors, for their community, it's unparalleled. I haven't really seen it in other parts of South Africa. But it's sitting idle. And that's the opportunity that I think we have, is to leverage people's interests, people's knowledge, people's incredible compassion to make something of this ward. Make it a shining star in, this very, very messy place of Johannesburg. So that's the offer in terms of fostering community. In terms of service excellence, I cannot stand the fact we had a house meeting yesterday. My friend Jeremy lives in Auckland Park. His water goes out every day from 8 p.m. to 5 a.m. Every day for the past 5 months. And Bridget was there. She was on it. She was making sure that he felt heard. But he asked yesterday, what's the plan? Does this just have to continue? And it doesn't. It really doesn't. Farida Adam is a good friend of mine. She heads water camp. The amount of knowledge that people have about how to turn these things around. It's there. We can develop plans. We can motivate for it. It doesn't just have to sit at the ward level. RISE is all about cooperative governance. We've displayed that at national level, that we want to work with governments to actually get things done. Can I work with ward councillors to get precinct level water turnaround plans, infrastructure turnaround plans? Because it won't just happen at a ward level. You're not big enough. But you are able to leverage the care that people have in other places, but it needs a leader. And I think I can offer that. That's the offer. I don't just want to be a responsive person. I don't just want to react to every problem because they're mounting faster than one person can account for. You need something proactive because otherwise, Joburg is really headed for a dark place.